Hi, there are 2 points from this week's readings that I want to touch on with you. The first is the concept of framing. For a media creator, the short explanation of framing is how you choose to tell a story. The longer explanation involves the preconceptions and expectations that influence how a message is consumed, both how you tell it and how an audience will interpret what you tell them. It's different from the visual artist's concept of framing a composition of an image or a curator's concept of putting a physical border around a photograph or a painting. But those can be convenient metaphors for explaining the subject. Here's an example. You look at this picture and think the president's plane. That may trigger a lot of feelings such as admiration or dislike for the president, but it's only a part of the picture. Let's zoom out. Here's the full image. Now you see the president's plane flying low over an economically disadvantaged area, and from the clothes the people are wearing, we can infer that it's in the South or in the summer. The overall picture might make you think of the president's sweet ride easing down into some southern pocket of poverty. How would that make you feel? Now here's the photo with its caption. President Obama's plane is landing in Havana. Now think back for a second. When you saw the president's plane, did you think it was President Trump? And did you react differently compared to if you knew it was Obama? Does the thought of Trump easing into a poor region make you feel different from the idea of Obama landing? And does a president landing in Cuba create different feelings than a president passing over some impoverished pocket of Florida? That's framing. The information you provide in a story or an image influences the way people react to it. Now, Giles goes on about an imaginary British news story, and I think he overworks his example. Most news stories aren't written with that much emphasis on choosing who you quote and to what effect, versus who you can get the information you need from. But at the same time, different outlets have different audiences. For example, the New York Times and the New York Post, and they do work to deliver the content that the audience wants, whether that's news for information or news for entertainment. And that's framing too. It all comes back to understanding your audience, knowing what words and images and references and other symbols mean to them, and using them in your communication to get the results you want. That brings us to the next point. Giles talks a lot about the methodology of one of his research projects. Psychology is a science, and it prefers research conducted according to the scientific method. The scientific method is a process composed of creating a hypothesis or an idea in the form of a question, collecting evidence related to the question, and analyzing it to determine whether the evidence supports or contradicts the hypothesis. Because of this, in science, the questions you ask, the evidence you collect, and the way you analyze it all influence the results you get. You could even say the ways you conduct a scientific inquiry frame the results. Because of this, it's important in science to understand not just the results of a study, but also how the study is conducted. Is the method appropriate? Is the data relevant and accurate? Does the data support the conclusions that the researcher presents? And if I follow the same methodology, will I get the same results? Here's an image that's going around the internet. On Facebook, it's presented as an analysis of bias in mass media news coverage. People who put it on Facebook, or like it, or share it, seem to consider it to be fact. But why? Maybe because they believe unquestioningly what a friend puts on Facebook. Or maybe because their favorite news outlet is positioned in a category they like. But how many of them stop and ask who created this chart, for what purpose, and with what methodology? Here's why that's important. Suppose you're a liberal and you believe liberal sources usually tell the truth. You look at the chart and you see Mother Jones and MSNBC are rated more liberal. Now you already follow Mother Jones and MSNBC, so this chart makes you feel good about that choice. Then looking across, you see Fox News and InfoWars are rated very conservative, and you don't like them anyway, so your feelings are validated there too. Was that the researcher's goal? Or was she trying to suggest that more people should follow the sources in the middle, high up near the top of the frame, because they're the most reliable or the best? Those assessments may be true, but before you believe them, shouldn't you ask yourself at least who is providing this analysis, why, and based on what information? It turns out that the author of this chart provides all those answers. You can dig into her website, discover what content she analyzed, how she rated it, and how she rolled it up into a graphic. With that information, you can judge whether you think the graph itself is accurate, meaningful, and objective, or whether you think something in her methodology led to false conclusions. And that's why methodology matters. Media psychology is a science that bases its research on the scientific method. When you see or hear information that seems scientific because of how it's presented or who it seems to be coming from, you should always look into the methodology behind it to determine whether you think it's valid science or just an attempt to change your mind.